made limitless. That's life unlimited.
We said we'd never break the 3-second rule. Never do that. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris.
As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
Good morning, I'm Bree Driscoll, and here's your Spectrum News in 90. The FBI is investigating an attack in New Orleans that left at least 15 people dead and dozens injured on New Year's Day. The FBI releasing a new photo of the alleged suspect, Shamsuddin Jabbar. Officials say he used a rented truck to run over revelers during celebrations in New Orleans' French Quarter. He was later killed in a shootout with police. Investigators are looking into whether there are possible connections between the attack in New Orleans and a Tesla Cybertruck explosion outside a Trump hotel in Las Vegas. Both incidents taking place just hours into the new year. At this time, they believe the Cybertruck incident was isolated. New York City police officials say 10 people are injured after a drive-by shooting in Queens, New York late last night. They say a suspect in a car opened fire from the street outside of a nightclub. The investigation is ongoing. President Joe Biden is awarding 20 Americans with the second highest civilian medal at the White House today. Those being awarded include Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, lawmakers who led the congressional investigation into the January 6th insurrection of the Capitol building. Last year, Biden honored the same medal to those who were involved in defending the Capitol during the attack. That's your Spectrum News in 90.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Weather on the Ones forecast. It's the first Thursday of the new year, and we have more cold weather surging in from the northwest as we have high temperatures in the low 20s in the northern plains in Minneapolis, right around freezing in Chicago, low 40s from New York, and in the southeast we're going to be in the upper 40s and the lower 50s. However, we have much colder weather coming and some snowfall in the forecast. We'll talk about that and much more coming up in 10 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bree Driscoll, and thanks so much for joining us here on Spectrum News. Today is Thursday, January 2nd. Our top story, a spree of violence across the country on New Year's Day, none deadlier than a terrorist attack in New Orleans. The FBI is leading an investigation on the attack that killed 15 revelers during celebrations in the city's French Quarter. Authorities say the suspect, Shamsuddin Jabbar, drove a truck onto Bourbon Street, running over dozens. He was later killed in a shootout with police. The president addressing the nation on the attack.
To all the families of those who were killed, to all those who were injured, to all the people of New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you. We're going to stand with you as you mourn and as you heal in the weeks to come.
And now investigators are looking into the possibility of the New Orleans attack being connected to a Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas that left the suspect dead and injured 7 others. We have team coverage this morning. We begin our coverage with Spectrum's Brian Scott in New Orleans. Brian, what does the scene on Bourbon Street look like right now?
Well, Bree, good morning. Yeah, you can see still a very active police presence behind us here on Bourbon Street, and the barriers are still up, but we have seen cleanup crews heading into the French Quarter as well this morning, and we are being told that there are going to be attempts to get Bourbon Street back open to foot traffic later in the day. However, still a lot of investigation for now going on down here after that attack on the early mornings hours of New Year's Day, where that driver drove a truck struck into New Year's revelers. As of now, 15 dead and many, many others injured out of that incident. The suspect, who was killed in a police shootout right after, is an Army veteran and former real estate agent from Houston who was born in Beaumont. Now, he used a vehicle off of a rented vehicle, rather, off of a vehicle share app, and investigators say that it did have an ISIS flag on it. He seemed to be radicalized, they say, after a divorce and falling on hard times, but they're still investigating what ties he might have to the terror group, if any. The FBI is also investigating his footprints in the Houston area as well. Now, we are also learning this morning about some of the victims in this incident. A few of the names coming out: a former Princeton football player, Tiger Beck, as well as a 37-year-old out of Baton Rouge, Reggie Hunter, who families say had just texted them hours before the attack saying Happy New Year. That was the last message they got from him. Obviously, terribly sad for that family and for so many other families that lost loved ones in this one, or even had loved ones injured in this one. Now, back out here today, the other big talking point is the Sugar Bowl, and that was postponed to today, and there are a lot of people out here on Bourbon Street or in the Bourbon Street area for that event today. The city assures the crowds that that will be a secure event, that security will be top of mind going into that, as again they continue to investigate this New Year's Day attack. In New Orleans, Brian Scott, Spectrum News.
Thank you so much, Brian. Investigators are looking into whether there are possible connections between the attack in New Orleans and a Tesla Cybertruck explosion outside a Trump hotel in Las Vegas. Both incidents took place just hours into the new year. Our Claudia Puente joins us this morning with more on the investigation. Claudia.
Yeah, good morning, Bree. That blast killed a suspect inside the vehicle. Authorities say the truck was rented with the Turo app in Colorado. Investigators know the name of who rented the truck, but are waiting to release that name until they can confirm if it's the same person who died. Surveillance video shows the moment the truck exploded outside President-elect Donald Trump's Las Vegas hotel, with officials revealing firework mortars, fuel canisters, and other explosive devices were found stuffed into the back of the truck. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Sheriff Kevin McMahill says Tesla charging station videos provided by CEO Elon Musk shows the truck arriving in Las Vegas around 7:30, drove an hour later into the valet area of the hotel, and sat 15 to 20 seconds before it exploded. The truck bed walls still intact because the blast shot upwards rather than to the sides. Now, authorities are still working to get proper identification of the suspect and are still determining whether this was an act of terrorism or not. Bree.
And Claudia, are officials looking into the possibility that the New Year's Day attacks both in Las Vegas and New Orleans were potentially more politically motivated?
Yeah, that's right. Sheriff McMahill acknowledges the connection between the Tesla truck and the Trump Tower. He says they know Elon Musk is working with President-elect Trump and says there are obviously things to be concerned about and something they continue to look at. They are also investigating any connectivity with what happened in New Orleans and any other attacks that have been occurring around the world. Bree.
Claudia, thank you very much. With the incidents in New Orleans and Las Vegas, authorities in our nation's capital are ramping up security measures ahead of a busy month. Anti-scale fencing is already up ahead of the certification of the president-elect on January 6th. Former President Jimmy Carter's funeral ceremonies will be taking place around the district, and Donald Trump will be sworn in as president on January 20th. Police say there was already going to be an increased police presence this year to prevent a potential repeat of the January 6th riot 4 years ago. New York police officials say 10 people are injured after a drive-by shooting in Queens, New York. It happened outside of a nightclub late last night. NYPD officials say a suspect in a car opened fire from the street and was possibly followed by a second vehicle.
Officers responding to the multiple 911 calls found a total of 10 victims, 6 females, 4 males, which were taken to area hospitals. All of the victims are expected to recover with non-life-threatening injuries. The investigation is ongoing. New
New this morning, President Joe Biden is awarding 20 Americans with Presidential Citizens Medals today. It's the second highest civilian medal a president can give. The medal is awarded to those who performed exemplary deeds of service for their country or their fellow citizens. Recipients are to include former Representatives Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, lawmakers who led the congressional investigation into the January 6 Capitol riots. Others receiving the award include those who fought for marriage equality and those who helped injured soldiers. Coming up on Spectrum News, a massive blackout forcing Puerto Ricans to celebrate the new year in the dark. Suspected cause and the good news for the U.S. territory this morning, that's coming up.
Here's the deal. Following the election, people need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 Eastern, 8 Central on Spectrum News Plus. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
Dinner time, off the internet. Devices in the basket, all of them.
Smartwatch. Connect as many devices as you want, and then some. With Spectrum, you get the fastest internet speeds and advanced Wi-Fi that can power all the devices in your home.
Okay.
I have to take this.
Get fast and reliable connections. Get Spectrum.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Weather on the Ones forecast. Lake effect snowfall returning across the Great Lakes region as that northwest flow moves over the relatively warm and ice-free Great Lakes as we head into the next few days. So it's not only today we're dealing with that lake effect snowfall, but this is likely going to stick around as we head into this upcoming weekend. So keep that in mind if you're traveling through, let's say, northeast Ohio, northwestern Pennsylvania, even western New York as well. The typical spots that deal with this lake effect snow. Much colder air is going to settle in across the lower 48, though, as we head into the next few days, especially as we get into next week. And then as we head into this upcoming weekend, the first one of the new year, another winter storm is going to work its way across the central U.S., bringing some significant snowfall for some areas. But in the meantime, though, the lake effect snow machine is in full effect across Michigan, over towards the typical spots that I mentioned before, western New York, northwestern Pennsylvania, and even into Ohio as well. And this is going to lead to some accumulation in that 6 to 12 inch range as we are expecting this to last over the next 3 days or so. So we have lake effect snow warnings in effect across western New York, over towards Ohio and Pennsylvania as well. Winter storm warnings and winter storm advisories are also in place across the Northeast. So as we transition into the next 24 to 36 hours or so, we're going to see the lake effect snowfall continuing across those areas. And then a weak system, an upper level system, starts to track across Indiana into Ohio as we head into the end of the day today. And by Friday morning, we're going to be seeing that snowfall across Pennsylvania, West Virginia for that matter as well, and even into the mountains of Tennessee and perhaps the Carolinas as well. Not expecting significant snowfall accumulations from that weak upper level system, but you'll notice we'll start to dry out in some of those areas, but we are going to be much colder as we head into the weekend with lake effect snowfall still sticking around across the Great Lakes region. So 3-day forecast in Cleveland, Ohio. It's going to be very cold in the middle and upper 20s with the chance for snow showers Friday, and probably have a lower chance as we head into the first weekend of the year. But St. Louis, that weekend storm system is on the way. We'll talk about that and much more coming up in 10 minutes on your Weather on the Ones.
If you're just joining us or heading out the door, here's a look at what you need to know. The FBI is investigating an attack in New Orleans that left at least 15 people dead and dozens injured on New Year's Day. Authorities say the suspect used a rented truck to run over revelers during celebrations in New Orleans' French Quarter. He was later killed in a shootout with police. Investigators are looking into whether there are possible connections between the attack in New Orleans and a Tesla Cybertruck explosion outside a Trump hotel in Las Vegas. 7 were injured. The driver of the truck died in the explosion. And New York City police officials say 10 people are injured after a drive-by shooting in Queens, New York late last night. They said a suspect opened fire outside of a nightclub. And that's a look at what you need to know this morning. Power has been restored to nearly all customers in Puerto Rico. A sweeping blackout plunged the U.S. territory into darkness on New Year's Eve. Officials say power was back up for 98% of Puerto Rico's nearly 1.5 million utility customers by yesterday afternoon. Luma Energy, the private company overseeing the power distribution in the island, warned customers could see temporary outages in the coming days. Authorities are still investigating the cause of the outage. Funeral services for former President Jimmy Carter begin on Saturday in Georgia. Carter's body will lie in repose in Georgia until Tuesday, when his remains will be transferred to Washington, D.C. The official state funeral will take place on January 9th before he's buried next to his wife Rosalind in Plains, Georgia. Carter died Sunday at 100 years old. Jimmy Carter knew world leaders, business titans, and celebrities, but it's what he did in the moments outside the spotlight that have really made an impact. Spectrum's Amy Elliott shares one North Carolina hairstylist's special memories of the late president.
This is Mr. and Mrs. Carter coming in the house.
Martinez was a 20-year-old exchange student from El Salvador living with a host family in Georgia who just so happened to be friends with President Carter and his wife, Rosalind. He recalls the president asking him questions about the U.S.'s current involvement with his home country.
He was just another human being. He was the sweetest person you could have ever met. And he made me feel so comfortable, so human. I wasn't the student from the third world country, you know. I was just another friend.
It made a lasting impression on Martinez, but as it turns out, for President Carter as well. 6 months after their sit-down meal, the president visited Georgia Southwestern College. Carlos was taking pictures for the school paper, and wouldn't you know,
he's working his way back, and it was an entourage of people walking along with him. And he sees me there and he stops. And the whole crowd just looked at him like, why are we stopping, Mr. President? And he looked at me and says, hey, Carlos, how are you doing? And that was such a moment for me, you know, because I said, I'm doing great, Mr. Carter. How are you? Good to see you. I said, wow, you know, for this man to have remembered my name and knowing that he must meet thousands of people, you know, world leaders and that kind of thing. It was something, you know, it just did something to my heart.
Martinez fills his day helping other people look and feel their best. He says he still treasures how the late president made him feel that day.
I think it's a wonderful thing that we have leaders like him, you know, to set the example of what life should be like.
Amy Elliott, Spectrum News.
Police in South Korea raid the international airport where a plane crashed, killing 179 passengers and crew. Police confirming a search warrant was issued on charges of professional negligence resulting in death and injury. Officials also raided airline Jeju Air as part of the investigation into the country's worst aviation disaster in recent years. 2 crew members survived the crash and are being treated for their injuries. Released hostages light candles on the last day of Hanukkah as the Israeli president asks for their forgiveness. During a candle lighting event, the president asking for the forgiveness of the hostages and the residents of the Gaza border communities for the, quote, terrible failure of the October 7th, 2023 attacks. It has been more than a year since Hamas militants stormed Israeli communities and took hundreds of hostages. Israel says Hamas continues to hold 100 hostages, over 1/3 of whom are believed to be dead. The attack sparking an ongoing Israeli campaign in Gaza that has killed more than 45,000 Palestinians, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Just ahead on Spectrum News, how a rare condition is giving perspective to an NFL lineman.
Spectrum News Plus. News from a new perspective, dedicated to refreshing storytelling and empowering communities across the nation. With balanced reporting, providing real context and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day.
Here's a look at your forecast across the country.
Local stories, connecting communities. We are Spectrum News Plus. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
When you know you can go anywhere because you have a connection that's built for everywhere. That's life unlimited. That's Spectrum.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/actnow.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Good Thursday morning, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Weather on the Ones forecast. First Thursday of the new year, and we have some changes coming to our weather pattern with more winter weather, especially in the central U.S. We have some light snowfall continuing across the northern plains into parts of Iowa, over towards Nebraska, and into the higher elevations of the Rockies, seeing some more significant snowfall, which is going to continue over the next few days. So this is just a start for what's to come. And as we head into the evening hours today, should be pretty quiet, but setting the stage for what's to come as we get into Saturday morning. Going to be seeing some freezing rain, perhaps some sleet taking shape in Kansas, portions of Missouri, and even into Nebraska as we start things off on our Saturday. But this snowfall is going to really start to build in across the central U.S. as we get towards Sunday. And a place like Kansas City through St. Louis, going to be seeing a mixing layer, though, for some of this as we head into this upcoming weekend. And then the storm system progresses to the east, bringing snowfall across the Ohio Valley, the Virginias, and even into the mid-Atlantic on our Monday, which is not ideal, as many are going to be working their way back to work and school if they haven't done so already. And this is certainly going to be causing all sorts of travel concerns to start early next week. As far as snowfall totals go, as we head into this upcoming weekend, we're going to see most of that taking shape across the Great Lakes region and into the higher elevations of the Rockies, where we could see well over a foot of snowfall taking shape, and even could see well over a foot over a 3-day period for some of those areas in western New York over towards Pennsylvania due to the lake effect snowfall. In other news, temperatures are going to get very cold as we head towards next week as well. For today, we're going to be be in the upper teens in the northern plains, low 20s, even around freezing in Chicago today, mid-40s.
Hello, I'm Ayana Harry. You're watching breaking news coverage on Spectrum News. FBI officials are giving an update on yesterday's terror attack in New Orleans. Let's listen in.
To remember that what happened yesterday was akin to those who are old enough to remember jigsaw puzzles. And that you would take a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle and you empty the box, and you've got to start sifting through those pieces. And you want to start, if you're real good, you start at the corners, right? Try to put your corners together. And from yesterday to today, over 1,000 law enforcement agents and officers, men and women, have been poring over countless amounts of data, of videos, of surveillances, interviews, tracking down every possible lead that came to us, whether it was the New Orleans Police Department, the Louisiana State Police, the FBI, or our other federal agencies. Also yesterday, I issued an emergency declaration. That declaration was meant to streamline resources and communications between state, local, and federal partners. And we're seeing the results of it. I also would like to remind everyone that what's going on in this city and this state is twofold. We've got to secure the city in preparation for 3 o'clock kickoff time for the Sugar Bowl. With that, I would also remind those who are in the city that as far as state resources are concerned, we have the Louisiana State Police, the Louisiana National Guard, which was part of that emergency declaration, which allowed us to put an entire MP company on the ground. Those become force multipliers, is what we call that in law enforcement and the military. That helps to add to the resources that we have. Wildlife and Fisheries, the Department of Corrections, DSF, DHS, our Veterans Affairs, our Probation and Parole, all state agencies. Any state agency who has a post-certified officers are here in this city to help secure the city. And so with that, I would like to turn it over to Christopher Rea, who is the Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Counter Terrorism Division. Chris?
Thank you, Governor Landry. Good morning. I am FBI Deputy Assistant Director Christopher Rea. I'm from our Counterterrorism Division at headquarters. I'm also joined by Assistant Special Agent in Charge Alethea Duncan from our New Orleans office, who you heard from yesterday. I'm here to discuss not only the latest investigative information we have here in New Orleans, but also let you know about other investigative activities outside of the state. I first, and most importantly, want to send our deepest condolences to the victims of this horrific attack and their loved ones. 14 innocent victims were killed in this senseless attack, and at least 35 are injured. We cannot ease the grief people in this community and across the nation are feeling at this time, but rest assured, we stand with you and in support of you. All the resources, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later, all the resources of the FBI are being focused on tracking down every piece of evidence, every lead, every interview, every potential lead we've got. While I won't be able to answer all your questions today, my goal is to be as forthcoming as possible with you on what we've uncovered so far. First and foremost, let me be very clear about this point. This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act. This was obviously a critical incident, and with that, lots of information and tips come pouring in from law enforcement, first responders, and the public. We have been aggressively running down these tips and information. As you all know, that takes time, and we will continue to do so until every lead has been followed through on. This investigation is only a little more than 24 hours old. So I ask you to keep in mind that as I go through some of the specifics later. Is involved in this attack, except for Shamsuddin Jabbar, the subject you've already been briefed on. A little bit about what the FBI is doing. So we are surging people and assets to the area from across the region and across the nation. Special agents in multiple field offices across the country have been deployed and are assisting with potential aspects of this investigation and following up on every lead. Additional teams of special agents, professional staff, and victim specialists continue to arrive to provide more investigative power and assistance to the victims and their families. We've also forward deployed a number of our critical incident response group assets, including members of our hostage rescue team, special agent bomb technicians, and crisis management coordinators. In addition, we have deployed more evidence response technicians to continue to process the various scenes that we have. So far, we have received just over 400 tips from the public, and that information is being followed up on both here in New Orleans and across the country. Some of the tips are here in New Orleans, and there are other tips in other states across the country that we are following up on. The FBI team and our law enforcement partners here are also reviewing hundreds of hours of surveillance and other video from both the French Quarter and other. As for a timeline, at this point, investigators believe Jabbar picked up the rented F-150 in Houston, Texas on December 30th. He then drove from Houston to New Orleans on the evening of the 31st, and he posted several videos to an online platform proclaiming his support for ISIS. There were 5 videos posted on Jabbar's Facebook account, which are time-stamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m. In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers, end quote. Additionally, he stated he had joined ISIS before this summer. He also provided a will and testament. FBI, we have a couple different scenes at the location. We have released the scene. Currently searching that scene right now. FBI and ATF agents have secured that house, and that location is being searched for potential evidence. On New Year's morning, Jabbar opened fire after ramming through a blocked-off area of Bourbon Street, used his truck as a weapon to run over the victims. Teams of specially trained victim specialists, again, as I said, are on the ground here in New Orleans, assisting survivors of the attack and loved ones of the deceased. We do not believe the public is in any danger around any of these locations. 3 phones linked to Jabbar have been recovered, and digital media exploitation is a priority to see what is on the device and any other potential leads. Additionally, we have recovered 2 laptops and are currently reviewing them for any potential leads. Those laptops were recovered at the Mandeville address. Evidence technicians will also be going over the F-150 truck Jabbar was driving. As you know, we recovered an ISIS flag from the back of the vehicle. Jabbar declared his support for the terrorist group on social media, as I stated before, as he made his way to New Orleans. FBI bomb technicians also recovered 2 IEDs in coolers, one from the cross-section of Bourbon and Orleans Street, and the second at an intersection approximately 2 blocks away. There were multiple reports of other devices. Those reports turned out to be misinformation or not actual functioning devices. Those are the only 2 devices that we've been able to recover that were functional. Both devices were rendered safe on scene. We did obtain surveillance footage showing Jabbar placing the devices where they were found. Two other, as I said before, 2 other items of interest were determined not to be IEDs. A little bit about Jabbar. Jabbar himself was born in the United States and is a U.S. military veteran. We are looking in everything in his life. While we have interviewed many people who know Jabbar, we still need to talk to others. Whether you know Jabbar personally, worked with him, served in the military, or saw him in New Orleans or Texas, we need to talk to you. You may not think you have relevant information, but what you know could tie in to one of our investigative leads. Specifically, we want to talk to anyone who was in the French Quarter on New Year's Eve or early on New Year's Day. That includes people spotted near one of the 2 IEDs on Bourbon Street. The IED was inside a cooler, and many people stopped and looked at the cooler and then continued on their way. Let's be clear, again, we do not believe at this point these people are involved in this incident in any way. We want to speak to them as witnesses and want to know what they saw and when. I went down to the crime scene last night. It is very hard to put into words what it looked like and how difficult it was to see. Anyone with information can call us at 1-800-CALL-FBI or send digital tips to fbi.gov/Bourbon Street attack. Response teams finished their work at the crime scene. Bourbon Street has been turned over to the city of New Orleans. As you know, there's also an FBI investigation in Las Vegas. We are following up on all potential leads and not ruling everything out. However, at this point, there is no definitive link between the attack here in New Orleans and the one in Las Vegas. And again, I'll preface, as I close, I'll preface everything with what also, although I've only been on the ground here a short time, I also want to express a sincere appreciation for our partners here, which include the U.S. Attorney's Office, HSI, ATF, the New Orleans PD, the Louisiana State Police, the Governor's Office, and countless others. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to the Special Agent in charge of ATF here, Josh Jackson.
Hey, good afternoon. As stated, my name is Joshua Jackson. I am the Special Agent in charge for the ATF New Orleans Field Division. And ATF's primary mission is reducing and solving violent crime throughout the United States and abroad. Solving part is the focus of this investigation. ATF resources that have been brought to bear to the city and to focus with our federal, state, and local partners have been our national fire investigators, certified explosive specialists, fire engineers, electrical engineers. These folks will additional investigative leads to help the investigative team identify what happened at the location in Mandeville and identify how that fire started and move the investigation forward from there. Additional resources that ATF has brought to bear into the city. There's our ATF Special Response Team. This is a tactical team capable of handling any sort of enforcement operation. This team is deployed, on set, and ready for the Sugar Bowl today. This team is also made available to the Louisiana State Police and also New Orleans Police Department to assist with any efforts that they may have during this period. Additional resources, as the governor alluded to, he executed executive powers and had an emergency declared to where ATF was able to tap in to Emergency Support Function 13 resources. This allowed us to bring additional explosive detection canines so that we can safely sweep the city and safely sweep the Super Bowl in preparation for the game today. These resources will still be in the city as we lead up to the Super Bowl and through Mardi Gras. These type of ATF resources will be here. The last resources ATF has brought to bear, and probably the most important one, is our victim witness coordinators. These folks come in and they provide resources to the victims and the family members that have suffered greatly during this tragedy. The entire city hurts, but the victims and the family members are in need of resources and care long after this investigation wraps up. This time next year to be hard for the families and friends who suffered during this event. So our victim witness coordinators are working with the FBI, the City of New Orleans coordinators to provide resources to these folks out here. And as we move forward, ATF will be committed. We will work with the investigative team moving this investigation forward, but also will be here. Our mayor of this great city, New Orleans. Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, good morning once again. And I just want to just echo my thank yous to the unified command of our law enforcement partners and at every single level, federal, state, and governor. Governor, thank you for your partnership. Thank you. I also want to thank the residents and the visitors of the city of New Orleans for your patience, for your support, and most of all, your prayers. Our hearts and prayers continue to go out to the victims' families, and the city of New Orleans, we're resilient. And as I stated on yesterday, my focus in terms of a priority has been on our victims. As you heard, that yes, the FBI was able to clear Bourbon Street. And what that meant also for me in this city was that we were able to remove our victims, identify them, and notify their families. Real reverence. They mattered, the families matter, and matter to the city of New Orleans. In addition to that, I want to just thank again our federal partners in Washington, listening to my plea personally for the additional resources to allow for the scene to be cleared, and again, attending to our victims. I walked by each one, and I did the sign of cross in my own way, because reverence, again, is important. So while we have been able to have Bourbon Street returned back to the city of New Orleans, and the due diligence has been done, that then allowed me to give the go-ahead to begin the cleaning of Bourbon Street. That started happening in the morning about 2 a.m. It was completed before 8 a.m. this morning. But that has really set the tone, I would say, and with the confidence that I have in the law enforcement partners, all of the resources that have been activated, how we have made sure that safety continues to be our top priority, how our assets have been deployed strategically, again, for the safety and the protection of our visitors and our residents in the city. And because of that, the confidence is there to reopen Bourbon Street to the public prior to game time today. The first order will be to allow for vendors to come in and service the businesses. That's important in order for us to stand up activation, as you know, Governor. And so with that, I want to reassure the public that the city of New Orleans is not only ready for game day today, but we're ready to continue to host large-scale events in our city because we are built to host at every single turn. I want to, again, thank all of those who respond. Leadership. We will continue to operate and cooperate as we always have. So I want to also thank all of our partners for the added resources for victim and crisis management. We know that that's again important. Working with our partner, the Greater New Orleans Foundation, we have set up a fund for our victims' families for not only the future. As you heard, this is going to be a long process for our people. So with that, the city of New Orleans, and with all of my confidence, we are ready. And we could not get here again without the unified presence, support, and cooperation. We are stronger together. And I want to say again, thank you so much. Thank you, Governor. So once again, the governor would like me to reiterate that Bourbon Street will be prepared for full activation before game time today. We know 3 p.m., so we're working towards 2:30 p.m. But prior to game time, the kickoff, Bourbon Street will be restored. So we're hard at work now. Our teams are now, and of course, working with our business community to serve our public and serve our residents and our visitors alike.
The FBI and all of our federal partners for the amount of resources they have poured into the city. This type of event, and that's the tragedy of it. And I think it's important for people to understand that to protect our citizens in America from evil, you have to crush it. You can't go out there and placate it. You can't go out there and say, oh, I'm going to put this in place and that in place and hope that evil doesn't show up on your doorstep, because it will. You have to crush it. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to put it all behind us. We're going to continue to keep the victims, those that are in the hospital, either fighting for their lives or trying to recover, in our thoughts and in our prayers. But you know, this morning, and I don't want to single out just one news source, but I just happened to turn on Fox and Friends, and that was a young man who was interviewed, who was actually on Bourbon Street during this horrific act of terrorism. And they closed out by asking him, what now? And I think he summed it up. He said, look,
you are watching Spectrum News, and you just heard FBI officials call the New Year's Day attack in New Orleans premeditated and evil, saying 14 people were killed, 35 injured. Agents in field offices across the country are now following up on all leads. The FBI has received over 400 tips so far. We also learned about the 5 videos the suspect in this case posted to social media ahead of this attack. Also learned about his movements in recent days. Joining me now live from New Orleans, Spectrum's Brian Scott. Brian.
Well, yeah, listening in on that press conference, I think one of the big highlights that we all definitely kind of cued in on out here is that the FBI saying that they're fairly certain at this point that that suspect did act alone. I know that's kind of been in question up until now. They also clarified that they don't think there's a definitive link between the situation out here and the situation in Las Vegas with that Tesla Cybertruck. So those are both two very big questions that have been kind of hanging over this thing. Another important piece to note that didn't come out of the FBI out there, but that came out of the city officials, is the discussions about getting Bourbon Street back open. We want to see if we can zoom up here for a second and take a look. You can see these big trucks out here. These seem to be filled with barriers. It looks like they're slowly bringing them out into the Bourbon Street area, potentially to get this back open. As the city officials said in there, they're hoping to get this open this afternoon for the big game today and the events after the game, obviously, and obviously hoping to do it very safely. I know obviously security has been a big concern out there ever since the attack, and you got to imagine these barriers are probably a response to that. But again, big highlights coming out of this one is that, yes, they are trying to get Bourbon Street back open today, and it seems that that attacker at this point, as far as they know, seem to have acted alone. Back to you.
Brian, what have you seen in the area around Bourbon Street? It looks pretty desolate where you are. Have people sort of left the area? Are people still in the neighborhood?
Well, it's interesting. So they obviously have a very large section of canal, this very large street we're on, kind of sectioned off as they are doing this cleanup around here. But all around canal, I mean, it's New Orleans as usual. It's likely a little bit toned down, but you can still hear the people drumming, the people playing music. A lot of fans in town for that game right now, kind of all throughout the side streets here, all surrounding the French Quarter. I'm sure many of them eager to get back into the French Quarter today if they can. So life definitely does go on out here, and I know several people have told me they're hopeful that they can get back to normal today and enjoy the New Orleans festivities as they expected they would be before, obviously, everything happened on New Year's Day.
And Brian, my last question for you, what are you hearing from folks ahead of the Sugar Bowl, which will be played in just a few short hours?
I mean, confidence. They're all very excited for that game. Obviously, it was postponed for them yesterday, and I mean, these are true blue fans. They made the trip out here for that game. They are excited to see that game. I did ask a couple in the elevator at my hotel, "Are you concerned about safety?" And they said not at all. They're very concerned. They're very satisfied that it is going to be a secure event, as the city officials have been telling us out here. They've been assuring folks that yes, this is going to be a secure event. And as will the Super Bowl coming up. Yeah, it seems very confident and just very excited to get to that game today.
Okay, Brian Scott live in New Orleans after a very difficult start to the new year. Certainly a traumatic time for that city. Thank you for your time.
Good Thursday morning, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Weather on the Ones forecast. First Thursday of the new year, and we have some changes coming to our weather pattern with more winter weather, especially in the central U.S. We have some light snowfall continuing across the northern plains into parts of Iowa, over towards Nebraska, and into the higher elevations of the Rockies, seeing some more significant snowfall, which is going to continue over the next few days. So this is just a start for what's to come. And as we head into the evening hours today, should be pretty quiet, but setting the stage for what's to come as we get into Saturday.